One. All right. This is Silas Grant again with another installment of How Should I Introduce You? And I have two incredible men on this call with me today, Herb Gray and Ransom Miller, two men that I really admire for the work that they do. And we're going to get into some of the work that they do and who they are as men today on this installment. How I want to start this thing is just starting by introducing the both of them individually. One big thing that I believe in is respecting how people want to be introduced. People can have a host of things that they have going on, and they may prioritize certain things over the other. So what I ask both of these brothers to do ahead of time is to give me a short spiel on how they want to be introduced, and I'll introduce them as such. Herb Gray is the owner of a mental and behavioral health company, Life Enhancement Services, in Washington, DC. They provide counseling and other support services to about 800 residents each week. Herb enjoys participating in impactful community service projects. He's very proud to have recently been selected as a member of the DC Police Reform Commission. Herb and his wife, Felicia, enjoy attending and hosting social events. He is the proud father of his daughter, Bailey, who recently started the first grade. So welcome to the show, my man, Herb Gray.
Oh, thank you so much, man. I've got a little time in my life. I'm hoping to add, he's also a Heisman Trophy winner and a Super Bowl champion, man.
Yeah,
so,
that's it.
I'm going to do that, man. But thank you, man. I love what you do and how you've embraced me. And I thank you for this opportunity and loving to be here with my good brother who I heard so much about, Ransom Miller, man.
Sure thing. And with that, Ransom Miller III is the founder and chairman of Project GiveBack, a community service organization based in Washington, DC. The organization's primary program is their annual Thanksgiving food distribution event. In other community service events, Ransom impacts his hometown community of Oklahoma City through a partnership with Bethlehem Star Baptist Church via the Ransom Miller III Scholarship Fund. He is also a member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, the Alpha Omega Chapter. He's a proud alumnus of Howard University, where he excelled in academics as well as athletics. Ransom resides in Washington, D.C. with his wife, Hardisha, and sons, Ransom IV, who is now a sophomore at Monmouth University, and Harrison, a first grader at Shining Stars Montessori. Ransom, welcome to How Should I Introduce You?
Yes, thank you, brother Silas. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you and Brother Herb. It's an awesome thing. I checked out some of the previous ones. I think we're gonna make it live tonight. So
you got two cues on this, man. You know it's gonna be all that.
Yeah, that's it. Listen, so when I started this whole concept in my mind, I started jotting down names of people that I thought were, really good people, and also people that I felt were interesting and had great stories. And, you two came to mind, and I immediately said, let me not just put them on the list. I want to put them together, right? Sure. And I knew you guys had so many commonalities. And so I was pleased in one way that you all didn't know each other, because I could make the connection. But at the same time, I feel like, the both of you are powerhouses, especially when it comes to philanthropy. So, that's in the DNA of both of you, right? And for each of you, what's the origin of your community service efforts? Like, take us back to the beginning. What sparked that interest in giving back to the community?
You want to get started, Ransom?
Yeah, so I'll take that. Silas, you said DNA, and I agree with that, but I have to trace back to my father and my mother. Growing up in Oklahoma City, my father was the chairman of the deacon board at Bethlehem Star Baptist Church, and I grew up watching him serve his community in that capacity. And not only did he serve in that capacity, he was the chairman of the benevolence committee. And what that meant at that time was, when somebody fell on hard times, or if somebody couldn't pay their rent, they went to the church, it was my dad who facilitated assistance to that family, and he, along with other people within the church. But I got a chance to see that firsthand growing up, and virtually my mother was on the missionary board, which did similar activities as well. So I say it's in my DNA because it was a part of my father's life. And my father actually started doing Thanksgiving and Christmas food distributions when I was 12, 13 years old. And I watched how that worked. And then, you know, as I came up, you know, I figured that was second nature. You know, much is given as much is required. You know, Shirley Chisholm's favorite quote, or my favorite quote of Shirley Chisholm is, service is our rent here on earth. And I took that to heart when I learned about it at Howard. And, you know, that was something that was normal at Howard. We used to give back. We used to do We Feed Our People, which is a program where we feed the homeless on Martin Luther King's birthday, all while I was at Howard. And then, you know, when I pledged, you know, my fraternity really got involved with the community, and we actually used to do Christmas food distributions. And I actually, you know, really one year I said, hey man, we should do something for Thanksgiving, because my chapter wasn't doing anything for Thanksgiving. And I actually went around and in my office when I used to work for TCBA, went around in my office and you know, pulled everybody together, passed the hat, and that was really the first Project GiveBack, right? So like I think my passion to give back and to touch the community is really rooted in my upbringing and what I saw my parents do and my parents' friends do. And that just kind of rolled over when I came to Howard, and the friend base that I had here in Washington DC was very community oriented, and I think that's what I point to as far as inspiration for what I do.
So much like Ransom said, you know, mine started with my mother, who was a big influence in the church that she attended in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and watching some of the after-school programs. My uncle had a huge tutorial program where a lot of kids excelled on the SAT to the point they got scholarships to colleges. And I watched people give them themselves, not necessarily philanthropic from the sense of writing large checks, but being able to give of themselves. Graduated from North Carolina A&T, took a first job in Atlanta, and I had a ability to work for a company called H.J. Russell Construction Company, which is still huge. And I watched them do business, and I actually watched them influence individuals in the city of Atlanta positively. And so, I started there and understanding what, how things go. I was a split time between, I used to call Charlotte my first home and DC my second home. Now flip-flop, DC is my first home and Charlotte's my second home. But I do a lot of work in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I started galvanizing corporations around certain causes. And I'm doing that same thing in Washington. We just had a huge food drive at one of the shelters here Sunday. And it really wasn't just me writing a check for clothing and food and other things, but it was about 40 people getting together. And so what I think that I have been able to do, and the same with even my fraternity as well, we've been able to do some great things. I think that I have been able to use whatever gift God gave me to network, leverage people, and talk to people and say, come on down here, let's do this, let's do that. And to use that from a philanthropic standpoint of saying, collectively, these bodies can get together and make a change and a difference.
Yeah, that's good stuff, man. I know with Project GiveBack, Ransom, we connected probably like 7 to 8 years ago, and I became one of the host sites for your distribution event. And so the first couple of years, you guys would deliver to my neighborhood, and I never got a chance to see the central operation until maybe like year 3 or 4. And that day I went to the school where you guys were, and Herb, this is no lie, there may have been like 800 volunteers in the school.
My goodness,
right?
Man.
But here's the kicker, right? The kicker is that, Herb, you may know me, I may invite you to come volunteer, and then you may invite someone that you know, and that person invites someone they know, and then like before you know it, you talk to a person, and there's 6 people between them and rent.
Oh wow,
right?
Wow, beautiful.
And what really that showed me was, the fact that, Ransom, you have leveraged your reputation and put it all on the line, and you've showcased, the proper way to manage and lead. And I've seen the same thing from you, Herb, in terms of your leadership. So, I know this is a broad question, but I really want to just ask the both of you, how do you define leadership?
I think the leadership, for me starts with, it's crazy, man. It starts with sometimes not even really wanting to be a leader, but just wanting to do what's right for the moment, whether it's business or family or my daughter or a civic organization. I just recognize, hey, this needs to be done this way, right? So, it's cliche as leading by example, but I always get out there and say, I'm going to get out there and do it, right? And then I just say, will you help me? Because I don't really have any holding card on anybody that says, hey, you got to help me, right? Even my employees, right? I mean, they're free. That's their free time. But I just say, I lead by example. I'm out there amongst the people, and then I say, can you help? And then I listen to what they say, and I listen to what they do. We all kind of blend in to say, this is the good direction to go to. So I think leadership is one of those things that it's hard to be a leader. It's weird, man. You're a leader because you're out there, but it's hard to be a leader if it's all about just you.
Yep.
Right? I just don't think you can do it. You've got to bring people in and let them know, hey, they've got skin in the game. I love you. I feel like I can't do this without you, type deal.
Yeah, I agree with that, Herb. I think for me, leadership is really, I try to develop a servant leadership model. And I think that goes hand in hand. I agree with you 100%, Herb. It can't be about you. If you're really leading people, I think back over my life and I realized I was a leader before I knew I was. The first thing my father always taught me is to treat people with respect and have some ethics.
Yeah.
And that word is not just about doing the right thing when nobody's watching.
Yeah.
It means more. And there's another piece that you add one word to that word, and you have work ethic. And that work ethic, along with a strong set of morals and ethics, it draws people towards you, right? So when you're doing the right thing and you're doing the right thing the right way, then other people take notice and they say, okay, well, let me take a further look. And then if they check you out and you pass the sniff test, then they will follow you.
Yeah.
And one thing I noticed about Project GiveBack over the years, it used to be, and Silas alluded to this earlier, it used to be Ransom and his friends that got together and did something good in the community. But as it began to grow, I noticed that other people were taking ownership into what we had developed. And I'll never forget one of the things that it probably happened a year or two before Silas came on the scene and what he mentioned. But this guy, had come and he had no idea who I was. I was running, trying to, get one of the vendors paid. And the guy said, hey, big man, take this box. We need some help. So I stopped what I was doing. I took the box, and they was like, "No, he got stuff to do. Y'all come on, let him know." I said, "No, the man had a job. He was told all these boxes need to go over there. He's doing what he's supposed to do. Leave him alone." But I think that type of mentality where you can set the pace and then bring people along. I think that's important. And when we started Project GiveBack mid-90s. Giving back and service to the community, that was kind of in vogue. But we managed to influence people and keep it fresh on people's mind by doing it the right way. That is still a part of our fabric. Yeah. And I think that speaks to the leadership of not just what I think I've accomplished, but the people around me. Now the people around me have just as much skin in the game as I do. And they'll check me in a minute and say, no, this is not what we're doing. Let's talk about this a little more. So, and that's a part of leadership as well. It can't always be your way or the highway. Yeah. And I've seen a lot of leaders fail in that regard.
Good point.
Yeah. I wanted to talk a little bit about your leadership and for the both of you, times where your leadership has been challenged or where you've had to step up and adjust. So talk a bit about that, like the challenges of leadership and like some examples of times where you've had to check yourself or step up and be more of a leader than you expected.
So, you're speaking of leadership. I'll talk from a business standpoint and from a philanthropic standpoint. There are many times when I'm doing a large endeavor, I partner, say, with 100 Black Men. I do a golf tournament, a lot of other things. Many times, when you get out there, sometimes you say, I want to do something, and what you're trying to do gets kind of big. That work can almost overwhelm you, right? It challenges you from your physical standpoint, your mental standpoint, maybe from your financial standpoint, challenge you because you're going to be away from friends or loved ones. And so there have just been times in my wanting to do good, I really got to the point, I'm sure Ransom said the same thing, I might have bitten off too much, right? I might have been, this is too much, right, to where I am. And so is at that point, I really have to dig in because people are watching you, people are depending on you. Sometimes people have given you the resources to make it work, that you really have got to step in there and work it out. One thing I say, no matter what you do, if you are a leader, even when these big time programs like Alabama wins a national championship, Nick Saban says, this is what we didn't do right, this is what we need to do different, right? So if as a leader, you always say, this is what I could do differently, this is what I can do. You rarely say I totally failed, right? Because you're going to give it your all. And then finally, I think from a business standpoint, a lot of times as a business owner, there's times, Silas, and I just want to grow. I want to do good in DC. I want to make things work. I want to do this. But sometimes you have challenges from hiring to resources and to making those things work. And so I really I've been challenged there. And what I had to do there was step up and not be afraid to hire people around me who were even what I would say smarter than me, right? And get those people around and say, this is what I'm trying to do, guys, men and ladies. How can you help me get there? So I've had to adjust my standpoint and then bring other people around me who I thought were even smarter than me, and not be afraid to say that.
Yeah, and I think that's critical. If you're the smartest person in the room all the time, you can wear yourself out.
Right.
Or if you're the hardest worker in the room, you're gonna wear yourself out. I think that's a very key point you made. And so as Herb was talking, I was trying to think of a situation. Two of them quickly came to mind where my leadership was challenged directly. And you will find that, and how you react to it will define your leadership style, right? I had one situation where I had one of my planning committee members, just disagree with me at every turn, right? So, it came to a point where I think, we both realized that even in like nonprofit service, that's a choice, right? And you have to. I think initially, early in my career, or my philanthropic career, I was one of the guys who tried to bring everybody together, kumbaya, sing the song, we all gonna get along. And I think I learned that sometime in leadership, you have to call a spade, you have to call a duck, and you have to say, hey, this is not working, we're gonna make a shift, right? You gotta do it the right way, right? You gotta do it with the same ethics, we gotta do it with a calm tongue. But sometimes you really have to, evaluate situations and move in a different direction. And that's something that I had to learn. It took me a long time to learn that. And I think that's something that immediately came to mind when you asked the question. But another thing that challenges leadership, in my opinion, and I experienced this, is, overextending myself.
Yeah.
And I think Herb alluded to this a little bit, right? A lot of times as a leader, you want to be aggressive, and there have been a few times throughout Project GiveBack where I said I'm gonna do 1,000 families. I had $200 money, I had 200 family money, right? So the overextension came, and was stressed out trying to meet that goal. But hey, guy, you came up with the goal, so now you got to go get it, right? So now you overextended. Now the people that you're leading are questioning, should we have done that? Should we have listened to him? Should we have pulled him back down from his goal? right? Those things tend to work, and that's why it's important to have good people around you.
That's right.
You mentioned, you know, you wanted somebody smarter than you in the room. You got to have people that are smarter than you, but you also have to have people that will challenge you in the right way. You don't want people just every time you say something, oh no, you can't do that. You don't need that spirit, but you need that spirit to say, hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this challenge that we're gonna have? How are we gonna fund this? Those are the type of people and those are the type of comments that really make a successful team.
That's a good point.
You know, it's funny, right? You all talked about stretching yourselves, but I think the proof is in the pudding that the stretch that you all have done has also advanced you all to the next level. So you talked about the 200 family level, but you've gotten to the point, Ransom, where it's 1,500 families or more a year now, right? Herb, you know, there were points where, you know, in 3-year period where you raised $250,000, right, for Chattanooga, North Carolina. So you guys have stretched yourself to that point. And when I look at, you know, whether it be 1,500 families a year or $250,000 in 3 years of, you know, funding being raised, fundraising is difficult, right? I've done a little bit of it myself. I'm far behind the both of you. But talk about the realities and the difficulties of fundraising, because to get on the phone, even with all the goodwill that you all have, it's tough to just ask somebody, listen, I need 100, I need 200, I need 1,000. Talk about the difficulties of that.
I'll let Ransom go, and then I'll get.
Yeah, so it is tough, but it's something that you as a leader of, especially in the nonprofit world, you get real comfortable with that, right? And you have to get out of the shyness, and you have to get out of the fear, and really say what you want. That was I spent some time in one of my former lives. I was a deacon, and we had another deacon from another church, and he came in and he gave us like a 2 or 3 week seminar on not necessarily financial literacy, but stewardship. And he owned 3 or 4 businesses, very successful man. And he said something that I'll never forget. He said, always ask for the discount. And he had like 5 or 6 more points that went with that. But his message was, you're not going to get any money if you don't ask for it. So you not only do you ask for it, but everywhere you go, you ask for the discount, right? So it works on both ways. If you ask it everybody you see for $100, you know, you're gonna get some hits, and you're gonna swing and you're gonna strike out a couple times. But I think with the fundraising for me really started just like that, passing a hat at frat meeting, passing a hat, you know, at homecoming, at Howard. You know, Howard got the best homecoming ever. You know, I know I'm on here with some Aggies, but and some Pirates, but
Harris, because you got that. I'm gonna let him have it today.
Yeah, but really, seriously, like at homecoming, I would roll up on people, yo, you know, and it's always in the fall. You know, in a few weeks we're gonna do the community service thing. What you got on it? And that was a big point, because I could hit everybody I came in contact with. Some people would just give me cash, but that changed over time. Oh, I'm gonna send you a check. No, I got a square. Hold on, I can get your credit card right now. Like, all of those things change. You have to be aggressive with it. But now what I'm saying is, it's not about writing a letter to the decision maker, and then following up with that person. Now you got to fill out the online form. And you got to go through different channels to really expedite, you know, corporate giving. But it's really, you know, a challenge, but it's something that we've been able to I wouldn't say master, but really function in a good way. And I actually give credence to where I think it's coming from. God has really blessed us at every turn. When we lose a sponsor, we gain 2, right? And you know, that has always been the case since we started. But it's a couple more zeros now. But I think the fundraising is something that you have to have the heart for. You have to have the spirit for it. And you have to be willing to hear somebody say no, and not let that kill your spirit.
Right. So to piggyback on Ransom saying, I mean, I think that For me, Silas, you know, most of the fundraising I do, it goes to corporations. I mean, from Bank of America to Wells Fargo to Microsoft, and so I channel their dollars, and I try to figure out what they are interested in, and you have to kind of listen to it and see can it align with whatever objective I'm trying to work on, right? So what does that mean? Meaning that if Lowe's right now is not really playing in the educational space, but playing in the I don't know, domestic violence space, right? You're probably gonna get a no if you're doing educational, but that doesn't mean you can say, hey, in October we're gonna do this, right, or whatever. And so I try to determine sometimes what corporations are doing and try to understand what they're doing. It used to be you could just go right to somebody and ask them for $5 grand, 25 grand, or 15, but now you kind of have to go through a vetting process, even if you've done business with them before. So Ransom said the same thing. Even if you know you're going to get, $5,000, you got to still fill out this paperwork now. Budgets are done differently. I think I was on a call the other day with a new guy with the Redskins, Thomas Davis, his wife were they're philanthropists, as you say. And one of the things they said, which I think really is going to get down to it too, is people got to trust when they give you that money, you're going to do the right thing with it.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, how you turn $5 into $10 next year? You got to have done well with that $5, right? You know, and then they might give you 10. If for whatever reason they don't trust you did the right thing with it, right? Then it becomes a difficulty. I was watching today a gentleman who was close to the president. He got jammed up on raising money. See, anytime you hear stuff like that, that kind of could fall on other people, because some people say, how do I know you're going to do the right thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I try to do, and I'm sure Ransom does this, you can't always show everybody what your dollars look like, but you can at least say, this is what we did, this is how many people we service, right? And if you would like to see a deeper dive, then we can do that.
Yeah.
And so that makes getting on the phone call a little easier when you know you're doing the right thing. And then it's easier for Ransom, because Ransom can say, Herb did the right thing. Maybe when I step to the room, they'll give me a shot, So I always try to look at it not just for me, but for the next person walking in the room as well. That's
important. And that's one thing, Herb, that I'm seeing more now than I did in the past. A lot of times some people have the mentality that, oh, I'm not going to share my connection. And that's kind of the beauty of what you're doing, Silas. Like, a lot of people don't share their connections. A lot of people don't introduce people to somebody else because they're scared they're going to lose out on something.
Right.
But I've been seeing lately a lot of people that are encouraging their friends and their constituents to do business together with each other. And I think that's beautiful. And that's something that I push and I try to model. If I got the best connection on turkeys in the city, then you do too, Silas, right? So it's not a competition. One guy was Maurice Mo Better.
Yeah.
He always says we should have positive peer pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Positive peer pressure, right? We're not competing against each other, but hey, Ransom gave 2,500 families last year. We could at least do 1,000. That's good peer pressure. So that, because we all helping the same population of people, those in need. So I think that was a beautiful point you made there, Herb.
And one last point I say on this, given how you asked, you have people out here, and you all know this, they don't really, for whatever reason, they don't have necessarily the time, energy, or the inkling to just get out there and do, right? But if you ask them, their get out there and do is, I'll write this check. They don't ask me for nothing else, but I'm gonna write this check, right? Yeah. And so you got to find where people are in that world, and that you will find people just say, I'm gonna write the check, don't bother me no more with the address, with the cash out. And so those are beautiful people as well that you keep close to you.
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Ransom.
Yeah, no, I think you mentioned targeting your fundraising or targeting your ask. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we used to do, we're not able to do it anymore, but like if I was, entertaining or trying to court a sponsor, I wouldn't take any money from them until they came to see our operation. Mm-hmm. Right? Once they came to see the operation, they knew it was organized, they saw where we were going, they knew we were being efficient, then I didn't have to ask them for the check.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Right? I was able to say, hey, this is what we're doing. This is how I think a partnership will help you. And that's one key point for fundraising. You can't just always go with your hand out.
Right.
You got to figure out how you, back to the networking piece that I mentioned at the UCLA course. You got to figure out how you can help your sponsor. What they need, what presence are they trying to fill, you know, and how can you help in that process? And when you do that, then you move from like sponsorship to partnership.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's funny. I read this story in the New York Times several years ago, and I always reference it. So Toyota has an American operation on the East Coast, and they were volunteering at a homeless shelter in New York. And initially they were making, I believe, financial contributions, and then they would go to the soup kitchen and feed people. And then what they did was they realized that their core competency was organizing and assembly lines. So they actually streamlined the homeless shelter's process of feeding people. And that was their way of giving back. They took the whole process, scrapped it, and gave them a new process that was more efficient, where they could feed more people faster. So Herb, to your point, everybody's not going to be on the front line with their hands, you know, in the pot feeding people, but you've got to also leverage the minds of people and what they do best. And some people are good at cutting checks. Some people are good at making phone calls and connecting people. And then there are others who actually put their hands in it. So, you know, I think there's a multifaceted approach that we have to have in terms of leveraging relationships and utilizing people where they're best utilized. Yeah, right. So Herb, you talked a little bit, Herb, about trust, right? And you know, I believe integrity goes along with that as well. Both of you are men of Omega Psi Phi. Both of you have been honored by 100 Black men. Both of you are respected in your respective communities. How do you all define manhood, but specifically Black manhood in these times?
You know, it's a moving, man, I don't even know if I'm gonna answer this question. So it's a moving target. I did something for Father's Day this year, and I got like about 40 guys together, and I had this shirt that says, there's a black shirt, white right, says proud dad, just simple 2 words on it, right? And that got a kind of a movement going. Somebody, you know, everybody said, I'm a proud dad. I can't feed everybody, bro. I'm not Ransom. But anyway, so I did this, but I did it because sometimes it takes a man and whatever that definition is to say raise a child, right? But sometimes it takes other strong men around us wrapping our arms around each other saying, I got your support. I deal with so many people in Washington, either through hiring them or dealing with who say who've been incarcerated and coming out, and they're saying themselves they want to be a better man than when they went in, right? And so I define it as sometimes we have always had great examples growing up, right, in our households or wherever. But I always tell people, try to be the guy that you wish was in your household. Now that sounds simple, but I'm like on PTA at my daughter's school because I didn't really have a dad on PTA, right? But I also say that I try to reach out to other brothers and you know, always give them a word of encouragement and not afraid to give them a word of encouragement. Tell them I love them. Tell them I think you're doing great things, man. Keep doing great things. It is a challenging time, but I don't know if today's time is any more challenging, you know, sometimes than any other time in the world, man. I've been home with this, and I'm not going to belabor the point, been home with this pandemic, watching Netflix, going all the way back from slavery all the way up, right? And I think that we've always had strong men, but we've always had challenges. I think that we don't get the credit as Black men sometimes that we should, because we just got a lot of just superheroes that are out there every day in our communities. So I can't really answer a question other than by saying I try to support my brothers, and hopefully they support me when I need it, and not just talking about financial, we're talking about with love and encouragement.
Yeah, and you know, our manhood is our first cardinal principle.
That's right.
And you know, we definitely have our own, you know, versions of the meanings of manhood, but like I actually, and I heard Herb say that, a lot of men don't have positive examples of manhood.
Mm-hmm.
But I grew up in a house that had an excellent example of manhood. And I saw my father work hard. I saw him sacrifice, and I saw him provide for my family, protect my mother, um, you know, be a leader in the community, care about other people's children, um, you know, raise other people's children, right? Be the basketball coach, be the Cub Scout leader. All of those things I saw in my own house. So, and I didn't really realize how fortunate I was to have that situation really until I went to Howard. And my father came to visit me. We had a football game, and my father came to visit, and he hung out. Matter of fact, I think he stayed in the hotel one night, and then he stayed in the dorm like next couple of nights because one of the dudes didn't have a roommate. So like he really hung with us, and they were like, "That's your father?" Like, and I was in a room with about 4 or 5 guys, and none of them had fathers in their homes.
Yeah.
And all of them fell in love with my father. It's based on the camaraderie that we had that weekend. And one of the guys came up to me after he left, and he's like, "Man, you don't know how fortunate you are to have that type of a man in your life." And that's when I started observing. And then I started observing those men and some of the challenges that they face because they didn't have those examples. So, to your point, it's kind of hard to put one definition around manhood, but I try to train my sons, and this goes back to lessons that I learned. Let your yes mean yes, and let your no mean no, right? Use the examples that you have around you, and then make the most of the ones that you didn't. Herb mentioned he's on the PTA because his father wasn't on his PTA. So I don't give any man an excuse, whether you grew up with somebody in your household that was an example or not. Take it and make it work for your children, right? So one of the biggest, I counseled a couple of young men who had children who weren't married to their baby's mother, right? And that's fine too, but you still owe that child.
That's right.
To raise that child and support that child. And I always challenge people to make sure that child knows you love their mother. You may not be with them, but that's something that's important to me, is to make sure these young guys know how to treat their children, know how to engage with them in a way, even if you didn't have the example, right?
That's right.
And that's when it falls on us. The responsibility falls on those of us who have the ability to influence and have the ability to mentor, so that we can say, yeah, you need to be your son's football coach. You need to go up to the school. First day of school, you need to be there. That teacher needs to have a concern that if something goes the wrong way, he or she's gonna have to deal with you.
Yeah.
Right? That cuts down on a lot of challenges that young kids have if they know somebody's gonna hold them accountable. Right.
Yep.
You guys both talked about, being responsible men, and in your own lives, both of you are married, both of you have children. How do you strike that balance between being ambitious and trying to accomplish the things that you're working on, and also making sure that you are active in the PTA and all those other things?
I'm gonna let Herb answer that because I'm still working on that.
Man, it's still a grind, man. I tell you, man, I was just talking to my wife just a second ago, man, until I got to do this podcast call. She was like, "Well, I thought you were supposed to be working on something, man." So I said, "Blame it on silence, man." But anyway, and I got out of that one right quick. But anyway, when you are, and this is the more difficult thing, is when you are quote unquote a leader, you're probably leading a lot of people not in your house, right? Yeah. And then they're going to call you all the time. They're going to have needs. They're going to want this. They're going to, expect. And you're going to find yourself so trapped in that, right, that sometimes home is going to sacrifice. I mean, it's a crazy thing, man. Some home is going to sacrifice. So sometimes I always want to. I have some goals with my daughter this summer. I want to teach her to ride a bike, start swimming, because I said, man, if I don't set some goals and get in there, I just won't be who I need to be, right? I didn't feel like I needed to be or need to be, and I can't, because I've traveled. I'm committed to a lot of people. So, and I'm sure Ransom will agree. Sometimes you just get out there so far helping other people that you just say, man, I better get back home and see what's going on. I better get involved, right? Before my kid end up being the one somebody else got to rescue, right? That would be terrible. You know what I'm trying to say? Yeah. So I try to balance it, man, and say, I got to get on back home, people. I got to cut off a phone or whatever,
Yeah, so this is, I mentioned that this is a challenge area for me for a long time. Especially in the early years, in my mind, I was doing God's work, right? And I still feel like I'm doing God's work. Like I said, I was a deacon in the church. I was doing Project GiveBack. I was an active officer or committee member in the chapter in Omega Psi Phi. I was doing I was gone 3 or 4 nights a week, just doing what I thought was great work, and that was true. But I slowly realized that my number one priority was sacrificing way too much, right? So I had to really, really step back and take note of what I was doing and the reasons behind it. And I had to prioritize, man. And if your wife and your children are not the number one priority, you need to step back. And it took me a while to realize that, but I did. Thank God I did, right? Yeah. I know several friends and family members that didn't realize that. And these people weren't out in the street partying. They were doing great stuff. But all that great stuff doesn't matter as much. And it took me some time to mature to get to this mind state. But I'm so thankful that I did. And I'm so thankful that my wife was patient with me when I didn't have that maturity, right? And, now I try to do things with that in mind. But I will say it's a challenge because you only have 24 hours in a day. And I used to get away with a lot of stuff because I didn't sleep a lot. But I done got old now. So I need to sleep, right? I think this is something that if I could encourage young folks that are doing good, what I call doing God's work, you got to start at home first and make sure that you're, and I had a demanding job on top of all of that, right? So you have to make sure that you put your family first so that they don't suffer, and so that ultimately you don't suffer, because that will write its own story, and then you have no control of it. Just like and it will be a travesty for somebody who's helping so many people in the community to lose their family behind, right?
I know for me, one of the challenges is that a lot of the work that I do alongside my friends. Mostly every person that I work with on serious stuff, these are friends of mine. And what starts off as a strategy meeting at Bus Boys or some other spot turns into us hanging out, right? So there's often like a gray line or gray area between us sitting down and planning a giveaway, and then it turning into us just sitting there watching the game after we talk. Like our strategy meeting might be 12 minutes. The next 2 hours of just hanging out, right? But I think for me, you guys have been parents longer than I have, but now being a parent and seeing how hard my wife works, it draws me back in the house to say, you know what, it's not fair for me to be out unless it's necessary. And, when I come back in, I have to feel like I got something accomplished when I left. So that's been a growth point for me as well.
One thing, I watched this show the other day, man, on Netflix. I was in Kenya. Barris has a show.
Oh yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, it's crazy, man, because the language they use. But anyway, it was the one I watched. It was on fatherhood, and it struck some interesting chords. And he ended up having to be the baseball coach. and his son couldn't catch the baseball.
Yeah.
And it dawned on Kenya that he had never thrown the ball to the son, right?
Yeah.
Other than that day, right? Everybody else had thrown the ball. And so it was just some interesting lines in there. And I said to myself, man, I don't want to be that dad where my daughter doesn't know, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm out there saving the world, right? Or trying to make, $1 million, whatever, right? You get what I'm trying to say, and what good. So I just thought, but we all struggle with trying to figure out, and yet have our own identity out there, in this world. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the funny thing about that show too, the last episode on the first season, when the wife is, I guess, essentially drowning, and he has to take off his chain, take the money out of his pocket, take off his shirt. And what that represented for me was that for us, in terms of identity, we try to acquire all these things to be seen a certain way. Yeah. And at the moment when our family needs us the most, we got to unpack all of that before we can even help.
Yep.
So that was the thing at that last episode that really stood out for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that. Mm-hmm.
And that was a key thing that I noticed as well. And another dude went and saved the man's wife, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So how do you recover from that, right?
Yeah, right.
But this to me, like, I mean, this is something, a development area still for me. It's striking a balance, even working from home, right? In this pandemic, I've been working from home for several months now. And, because I'm downstairs, sometimes, I'm accessible. But, really trying to strike a balance. And I remember when I first started working from home, I never worked from home. So, I said, hey, you gotta keep my son upstairs. We gotta work together, because I gotta have total, concentration. And my son would inevitably come down and just come in the room while I'm on the call. I'm surprised he hasn't come in now. But I was super, hyped about like making sure that he was in another part of the house, and that was stressful for me. And then one day he came in, and my boss said, my manager said, hey, Harrison, how you doing? And he just established a conversation with him, and we kept our conversation going, and he was in here, and it wasn't a big deal. So over time, that balance started to happen naturally, but it was because the people that I worked with were accepting and wanted to say hi and understand, and they have children too. So so I think that's key in it as well.
Yeah. So the both of you have come to the District of Columbia by way of Oklahoma City and also from North Carolina, right? And me being a DC native, I've always seen a very stark difference between people who are not natives and how they view the city versus those who are here. And quite honestly, I see through my relationships with those who are not born and raised here, you guys see DC as a gold mine, right? An opportunity place for just whatever you'd like to be able to do. And unfortunately, some of the folks who are natives don't see it that way, and oftentimes it's not always someone else's fault, right? And I think for me, and I'm kind of trying to build this out the correct way, I see sometimes, especially in the Black community, those that are not natives, they also see the opportunities like the two of you have. Talk about what DC means to you all, and also how do we get people to recognize all the opportunities that are here?
You want to start, Ransom?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I think about a lot, especially living in DC, especially over the last few years. You hear natives this and native that, and I've actually participated in some of the rallies and endeavors like to benefit the natives of Washington DC. Personally, I'm not from here. I claim Oklahoma City all day. Where I was born and raised, but I've been here since I was 17 years old. And Howard University was the little microcosm that was DC before I ventured off campus. So to me, like, I saw DC through Howard's eyes, if you will. And, it wasn't inviting. It was to me, like, people didn't just wrap their arms around the Howard students when I was at Howard. It was actually the opposite. We had to walk past the block boys, is what we used to call them, just to get to class. And thank God that we had DC boys in our crew, right? So that kind of helped. But you know, I guess for me, DC, like I said, I see DC through Howard lens. I saw DC through Howard's lens, but I've gotten to know so many people who are born and raised here and salt of the earth type people who I agree with you, Silas. A lot of those guys don't see the opportunities that are here for a lot of different reasons. A lot of it, you know, you mentioned some, you know, that are maybe, you said, I think the word you used was not their fault, or, you know, no fault of their own or whatever. But like, you know, education wise, you know, opportunity, you know, it's there, but I'm not sure if I understand correctly, like, you know, why some of the people that are natives don't take advantage of some of the opportunities that are here. But I do recognize that there are some inequities in not just natives, but African Americans in general in Washington, D.C. I identify with some of the challenges that I hear from my friends that are natives of Washington, D.C. You know, while I feel like I've been successful here, I still think that there are more opportunities out there that I don't know about. And there are some, you know, the guys from Washington, D.C. that I hang out with, they know everybody.
Yeah.
Right? I was sitting in the DMV complaining to my man on the phone how long this was taking. He's on USC Street.
Mm-hmm.
I said, yeah. He said, hold on, I'll call you right back. I'm not lying. Like 40 seconds later, Mr. Miller.
Yeah.
Like, I've been here 2 hours.
Yeah.
This dude went to high school with the person that was running the DMV, right? So,
Right.
like, I see it a little differently, Silas, in that a lot of the guys that I run with actually have access in the city that some other people don't.
Mm-hmm.
I think, but that is not highlighted because it's not an issue. The real issue is the lack of access to capital, the lack of access to real solid education, a lot of access to you know, contracts or knowledge of how to start your own business. Those are the things I think we can help with, you know, with as we mentor these young guys, young ladies, to where we can put them on game that we are aware of. And that's, you know, if I could be of assistance to somebody that's a native, a young guy, that giving them my access to my connections, that's something that I feel like that's a responsibility that I have.
Mm-hmm. So I'll say that, you know, I see different points of DC, and just, you know, I just sit back and reflect. There's just different points, man. I've just have seen some areas where the level of poverty and the level of, you know, no grocery stores, no hospitals. I mean, it's just amazing, man. You say you're living in the nation's capital, and whole areas are just abject poverty, man. And how can you expect the people to live any better? Because they just can't see any hope, right? Hope has been dashed since they was 5 or 6 years old, right? Or to deal with whole groups of people that we talk to for some of the high schools, and they're like 5 or 6 of their friends are dead because of bullets. I'm like, what? You know, because I just never knew that in North Carolina, right? I mean, you know what I'm trying to say. And so you understand the challenges. Now, that's one phase, right? Coming from North Carolina, well, I think people have good opportunities, but coming into DC and I go back to Howard because my cousins, everybody went there, so I was able to leverage those guys' connections. I was able to. I always joke that DC is the biggest small city in America, man. I mean, if you get tied into DC, everybody gonna know somebody in that area, right? You know what I'm saying? In DC proper, right? So, but you just got to get tied in, right? And you're just a phone call away. But I recognize Washington as an opportunity to really grow and thrive as an African-American entrepreneur whether it's an entrepreneur or I even know some corporate people who've done well here. And I know a lot of those people have come from other areas of the country, right? So I always wonder myself, man, I said, why aren't there are native DC people who are doing well, but why aren't there a few more, right? And so, and I don't know if it's because of the starting point or I don't know what that is. But I do, when I talk to kids at different high schools, I do talk to them about all the opportunities that are here. But I do say, for all the challenges that it may have, to me, the glass is a little bit more full than it is empty. And I recognize it as a city, to me, that I want to do good in for the good of the city, because it's been good to me.
Yeah. Well, thing. I noticed, throughout this conversation and even in separate talks with you all individually, the college experience comes up a lot. For you, Ransom, it's Howard. For me, it's Hampton. For you, Herb, it's both North Carolina A&T, but also Johnson C. Smith, where you're also active as well.
That's right.
What do you think about the state of HBCU specifically in this period, and what do you think it looks like for the future? I mean, I'm thinking about my daughter now, and I would like for her to have a choice of a Hampton or a Howard or A&T.
Yeah.
But I'm holding out hope that they will be relevant 15, 16 years from now when she's ready to start making selections. But what do you all think about the state of HBCUs?
So I serve on a board at A&T and of course Johnson C. Smith. I understand that they have some severe challenges. Some people feel like the number may shrink a little bit. I think Notre Dame's like a Catholic school. Like, they might not be that many Catholic schools, but there are some out there. There might not be as many HBCUs, but there are some. I think, though, somehow or another, I got love for wherever you went to school, but somehow or another, there was a wave that says, I'm going to go to PWI, right? But I think that wave is sort of trending backwards now, right? And people are saying, you know what, I can get a good education at Hampton or Union or Morgan State or Howard. I can get a good education. I can do well. I can be amongst my own and do well. That whole Kamala Harris thing and that shout out to HBCUs, I mean, that was big, right? But I think that we're going to continue to have to figure out ways we can give back to our own colleges. We got to get corporations continue to give back, and we got to produce, because I think I just would not be the person that I am today, not just A&T, but the fact that I went to A&T. So therefore, when I run into a person with the Jackson State or FAM or wherever, I got the same language, right? I understand. And that language also tells me that I can compete when I'm in an overwhelmingly majority, say, Caucasian experience. I know I can compete wherever, but I also know where my home is, and it's not always A&T was loving, but it is sometimes just catching up with some cats, like I say, went to Tennessee State or wherever. It's a home, that type of home thing.
Yeah. So I feel strongly that, like, I came to Howard, to play football. And I and several of my teammates in my class had scholarship offers to PWI, multiple scholarship offers to PWI. I chose Howard because I went to Black Catholic school, Black high school, and then, so I went to Black church. So, like, that was next for me, right? And my high school principal pushed me to go to Howard specifically. But I really have been happy that a lot of these young men and women are choosing these HBCUs over the PWIs. I have no issues with the PWIs. I think that a lot of them are fantastic, but what I see at HBCUs is something that's geared towards them, not necessarily geared towards another demographic. And I think, I'm hopeful that a lot more folks will take that route, and that, McCool Maker, hopefully, we see McCool Maker at Howard, Mikey Williams at Hampton, like, those type of things are game changers.
Yeah.
because if you look back on history, like, you know, all the endowments that University of Alabama or LSU, that didn't happen before they integrated. They had money, no question. But a lot of the notoriety came from their athletics program, which was fueled by young Black men.
That's
right. So, you know, I'm hopeful that that's true. But Silas, to your point, how do we make sure that your daughter has the opportunity to experience what you experienced on the first day of campus at Hampton?
Yeah, I never forget it. My first day was August 23rd, 1997.
Exactly. That's why I'm calling it out, man. Mine was like August 7th. I came in before everybody else to play football, man. It was you know, memorable, right? How do we make sure that our children have that opportunity? Not to say they'll go, but they should have the opportunity. And I feel challenged, and I've been convicted over the last 5 or 6 years to start giving back in a different way, financially, to my HBCU, right? And I'm encouraging everybody that went to HBCU to give back. We all know, like, we're in philanthropy. We go and look for those corporate dollars. When they're doing grants and you know, trying to figure out like how they're going to allocate funding to HBCU, those folks, they ask, "What's your alumni giving?"
What's your alumni? Yeah, they do.
Right? They ask those questions, and we bow our head and say 5%.
Yeah.
You know, whatever the percentage is, and you go to a University of Oklahoma, or you know, or the University of North Carolina,
yeah,
and you know, it's 85%.
Yeah.
Right.
And you know, the crazy thing, Ransom, I hate to cut you off. The crazy thing about how many alumni give, they're not asking how many of them give 10,000, 15, 20,000, just how many of them give anything back. That's all they're asking you, right? Yeah.
But you know what? In my mind, I've asked a lot of my friends and family that went to HBCUs, do they give back? And of course, a lot of the response is no. Back in the day, it was, well, why don't you? Oh, well, my experience was terrible. The A building did this, and they dropped my classes, and yeah, right. So, you know, we've all had those experiences, but you know, at some point, we have to make the decision if we're going to allow on our watch for Silas's daughter not to have the opportunity that he had.
Yeah.
Right. And I think ultimately, and I've heard like Roland Martin and other people talk about it bluntly, like if we don't, then those things will go away. You know, and we've seen some of those things in our lifetime. Morris Brown is not Morris Brown anymore.
Yeah.
Right? Because they didn't have the funding to keep themselves up. And in this pandemic, when this pandemic is going to cause some challenges for HBCUs like we've never seen.
Yeah.
And unless some of our alumni step up to do it, Oprah can't save every HBCU. The Bezos wife can't save every HBCU, although she tried. Like,
exactly.
She tried.
Exactly.
But until we start making that a priority, I think we're at risk, right? So, you know, every chance I get, I mean, I've tried this, you know, I got a son in college and a lot of other responsibilities, but I have to prioritize that. And you know, and I'll be honest with you, I choose to give to our football program.
Yeah.
We got a new coach. I'm excited about the new coach, and you know, he's talking all the right things. He came from the University of Florida. That's the way I choose to give back. But I have to make sure I give to the general fund as well. Right.
Ransom, I got my letter downstairs from Howard. I gave him a check. I met the dean of the School of Business. I think it's Barron or something last year.
Yeah.
He talked me into giving. I gave him, and then they sent me a letter today. Said, "Mr. Gray, we want to thank you." They say, "Bless me. You blessed us last year. We're looking out for you right now." I'm like, "Oh my goodness, you just cashed the last check." You know.
Look, they know how to go. Look, like the deacon told me.
Yeah.
You gotta ask people.
You better ask, man.
You gotta ask them for the money.
Yeah.
I got a phone call. Well, actually my parents' house. There was a phone call from Hampton. And it was random. So my mom called me and said, man, Hampton called here for you. You got to call them. And kind of find out somebody nominated me to be a class leader for my class.
Oh, wow.
They had elections and I ended up getting selected to be a class leader. So now myself and one of my classmates, we've got to raise a large amount of money, right? And all I'm saying is I'll be calling both of you to get some
There you go, man.
I got to get some
Look, my nephew, man, my college roommate's son is he's a freshman at Hampton. He's playing lacrosse down there. So I'm gonna be a Pirate fan for 4 years.
There you go, man. There you go, man.
Yes, indeed. Hey, well, listen, guys, I really appreciate you all giving time to be able to be a part of this discussion, and I'm glad I had an opportunity to introduce to both of you. And it's my hope, like with all the other connections, that something down the line will bring you all together to be able to do something, to be able to help others, because, again, that's in both of you guys' DNA. Ransom, Herb, it's been great. I appreciate you guys, and I'm always grateful that when I call, you guys pick up and that you always have a heart and a spirit to give. So I appreciate you all.
Thank you, bro. You're my guys. You're the same guy, man. I love you. We thank you for everything you do for not just us, but a lot of people in this city, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And good to meet bro Ransom. I'm gonna get your number, man. We're gonna hang out at the frat house, see what's jumping off down there.
Yeah,
what's that song? We're gonna see what's popping. Isn't that what they say, man? Yeah.
So, Brother Herb, you know, the deacon taught me well, right?
Okay.
So, you know, I'm putting in my plea right here for you to be a sponsor for the 26th annual Thanksgiving food distribution on November 21st.
Man, I'm giving financial and bring my daughter and my wife. We're gonna roll up our sleeves and we're gonna do whatever we need to do to help you out, bro. So we're already there, man.
That'll work.
That's why we do this right here. I want to make that connection happen.
We already work, man. So we're gonna make it make it happen.
Indeed, man. Well, again, thank you all, and for those that are watching, thank you all for continuing to watch How Should I Introduce You. We'll have more conversations like this in the future, and until then, we'll see you.